Have you ever wondered what the world would be like if the Roman Empire never fell? We all know the story. A sprawling empire, brought to its knees by internal strife, economic collapse, and external pressures. But what if it hadn't? What if, instead of crumbling in 476 AD, Rome had endured for another 1,000 years, shaping a future radically different from our own? Let's strap on our sandals and march into this fascinating alternate timeline. First, let's set the stage. To survive, Rome would have had to solve its biggest problems. Imagine an empire that successfully navigated its succession crises, perhaps by establishing a clear, hereditary system or a stable elective monarchy. It would have needed to manage its vast borders not just through military might, but through smarter diplomacy and integration, turning barbarian threats into Roman allies or even citizens. Economically, they'd have to ditch the slave-based economy, which was becoming unsustainable, and embrace a more dynamic, wage-based system, maybe even kickstarting an early industrial revolution powered by Roman ingenuity like steam engines, which they actually conceptualized. If this stronger, more adaptable Rome had pushed forward, the Dark Ages, as we know them, might never have happened. But in a world where the emperor still reigns supreme in Rome, the church would likely have remained under imperial control, much like the Orthodox Church in the Byzantine Empire. Instead of fragmentation and the loss of knowledge, Roman infrastructure, the roads, the aqueducts, the legal systems, would have been maintained and expanded. Literacy and learning, preserved in Roman institutions, would have continued to flourish across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Latin wouldn't be a dead language. It would be the global lingua franca, the language of science, commerce, and diplomacy, evolving over time but remaining universally understood. What about religion? This is a huge one. In our timeline, the fall of the Western Roman Empire allowed the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, to gain immense political power, shaping medieval Europe. The power dynamic would be completely different. There might not have been a great schism between East and West, and a single, state-controlled Christian church could have dominated. This would have profoundly impacted the rise of Protestantism. Martin Luther's Reformation was a rebellion against a corrupt and powerful papacy. Without that specific context, would it have ever happened? Technologically, a surviving Roman Empire would be a powerhouse. The Romans were master engineers. With another millennium of stability and resources, their progress would have been staggering. Imagine Roman legions armed not with swords and shields, but with early forms of firearms, developed from their knowledge of chemistry and mechanics. Picture Roman galleys replaced by steam-powered ironclads, dominating the seas. Roman cities wouldn't be ancient ruins. They'd be bustling metropolises with advanced sanitation, public transport, and perhaps even early forms of electricity, all built on their unparalleled foundation of engineering and civic planning. The scientific revolution might have occurred centuries earlier, spurred on by a culture that valued logic, order, and practical innovation. Now let's think bigger: global exploration. In our history, the age of discovery was driven by European nations like Spain and Portugal, seeking new trade routes to the east after the fall of Constantinople. But what if Constantinople was simply the eastern capital of a thriving Roman Empire? The impetus for finding a new route would be different. It would be Rome, with its organized government and immense wealth, commissioning expeditions. Imagine Roman explorers, not Spanish conquistadors, landing in the Americas. The encounter would be drastically different. The Romans had a long history of incorporating diverse peoples into their empire. While their methods could be brutal, they also had a framework for assimilation, offering citizenship and a place within the Roman system. Instead of the chaotic conquests we saw, we might have seen a more systematic, organized Roman expansion. Native American civilizations like the Aztec and Inca would face an opponent unlike any they could imagine, but the aftermath might be one of integration into a global Roman state, rather than the near-total cultural destruction that occurred. The world map today might not be a patchwork of independent nations, but a globe-spanning imperium sine fine, an empire without end. Let's look at our daily lives. The legal systems in much of the world are based on Roman law, but in this timeline, that influence would be direct and unbroken. Our concepts of citizenship, rights, and governance would flow directly from a living Roman tradition. The languages we speak would be different, too. The Romance languages, French, Spanish, Italian, might not exist as distinct tongues, but as dialects of a universal, modern Latin. English would be almost unrecognizable, having never undergone the massive infusion of French and Latin that followed the Norman conquest, which itself was a product of the post-Roman power vacuum. Our architecture would be grand, filled with arches, domes, and columns, a continuous evolution of classical style. Our political debates might revolve around the power of the Senate versus the emperor, not Democrats versus Republicans. The idea of the nation-state, a cornerstone of our modern world, might never have taken root. Instead, identity would be tied to being a civis Romanus, a citizen of Rome, regardless of whether you lived in Britannia, Egyptus, or the newly discovered provinces of the Americas. This Roman superpower wouldn't be a utopia, of course. It would have its own immense challenges. Managing a global empire would be a logistical nightmare, even with advanced technology. The potential for authoritarianism would be immense. A single, powerful state controlling the entire known world could easily become a tyrannical regime on a scale we can't even fathom. Rebellions and civil wars would still happen, but on a planetary scale. Cultural diversity might be suppressed in favor of a monolithic Roman identity. Freedom and individual liberty, ideas that flourished in the fragmented and competitive environment of post-Roman Europe, might be seen as dangerous and destabilizing concepts. So, as we pull back from this alternate reality, we see a world of profound contradictions. A world of incredible technological advancement, but perhaps less personal freedom. A world of unity and order, but perhaps less cultural richness. A world without a dark age, but also without a Renaissance or an Enlightenment as we knew them. The fall of Rome, in a strange way, was a necessary cataclysm that allowed for the birth of our modern world, with all its diversity, its conflicts, and its unique blend of cultures and ideas. It shows that sometimes, the end of an old world is the only way for a new one to begin. What do you think? Would you trade our world for a modern Roman Empire? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It's a fascinating scenario to ponder. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more what-if histories. Until next time, stay curious.